Hello, you're watching the Nouvel Esprit video series on the theology of the body. This video is dedicated to audience 68. We are your hosts. I am Jeremy Hossotter.
And I'm Guillermo Moreno.
All right, so to just simply dive in, this audience is mainly focused on God, the Beatific Vision, and our communion with Him. That is the theme of the audience. So without further ado, let's begin by talking about the Trinitarian communion of persons. So, the eschatological communion is man's participation in the Trinitarian communion of persons. And what we are talking about when we say eschatological is it comes from this word eschatology, which is the theology of the last things, heaven, hell, death, the immortality of the soul, the judgment, all those things. And so the eschatological communion is a reference to our state of being after we die and go to heaven. It's talking about our living within the communion of persons, that is the inner life of the Holy Trinity, that Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the inner life of God. And this communion that we enter into is the loving, perfect communion. And we are nourished by seeing God face to face. And we also have a return of this term, subjectivity. Subjectivity, if we recall from our many discussions before, is essentially the personal center of man, the center of what makes man a person. It is from our subjectivity that outflows our action, our willing, our deeply spiritual emotional life, our thinking. All those things are properly described as our subjectivity. And in this communion of persons with God, this Trinitarian communion, we keep our personhood. Our personhood is neither absorbed nor destroyed. And we acquire our personhood, we acquire our subjectivity in a more perfect and full measure. We become more of a person of who we are meant to be and fulfill our human nature and our personal nature in this communion with God. So those that enter into this communion with God and see God face to face will have a perfectly mature subjectivity. They'll have a fully mature personhood. We could say that they are most properly persons. And in some respect, everyone here on earth, we're working out our personhood in some respect. As we work out our salvation, we become more and more a person, the deeper we mature spiritually, which is kind of a paradoxical statement because, in some respect, each and every one of us, metaphysically, yes, we are persons, but you can be more of a person or less of a person depending on what you choose to do in this life. If you choose to be a evil person, you close yourself off from being able to give yourself as a person. And that inability to give yourself as a gift closes you off from the communion of persons. And if you close yourself off in this way, you become less of a person. And the more you close yourself off, the lesser you become a person. Whereas the more you open yourself up, the more you become a person. Now, what is important also in this dynamism of this self giving of this Trinitarian communion of persons is that the body is not separated, but it is part of this communion. The masculinity and femininity of man and woman is to be explained by his or her response to God's self communication, by God's gift of self. So there's a meaning to our bodies, its masculinity and femininity, that is rooted in our response to God in this gift of self. Guillermo, do you have anything you'd like to add on at this point?
I was just thinking about how this is consistent with our psychology. What I mean by that is that depending on the habits that we build, whether they're good habits or bad habits, it's just going to become easier to do one or the other. The more that we partake in them, the more that we actively choose good habits or bad habits. And especially regarding bad habits, it's just something that's very challenging to climb out of, in my opinion, especially later in life.
Definitely. The earlier you can form good habits, the better off you'll be the rest of your life. At least that's what I tell the students I teach. Yeah, thank you for that, Guillermo.
Hmm.
All right. The response to God's gift of self. So, in response to God's gift of self to man, man responds with this personhood, with his subjectivity as a gift to God. And this entails then that immortality and the resurrection are something dialogical. This is a point that Joseph Ratzinger makes, which JB2 cites in footnote 79. Because God gives himself to man and man responds by a reciprocal gift of self, this means then that immortality and the resurrection is something dialogical. There's a communicating between man and God. And this communicating is in terms of gift of self. And this, in some respect, kind of it makes me think back to Adam and Eve in Genesis 4, verse 1, chapter 4, verse 1, when Adam knew his wife Eve, and that knowledge they created their children. The children was described as knowledge, this knowing from this communion between man and woman. I'm not saying there's something sexual going on here. What I'm saying is within this communion of persons between man and God and responding, there's a knowing involved at a very fundamental existential metaphysical level, deep down. We get to know God in a deeper way. And in that knowing contains the promise of the resurrection and seeing our lover face to face in the afterlife. And that's why we can say that God is he who is both knower and lover of ourselves. God is he who knows us, he who loves us, and is the principle of life. And because of this dynamism between giving, receiving gifts of self between ourselves and God, we experience life, and our response to God is something that beatifies us, makes us blessed. That's what this word beatifying is in reference to. It's blessedness. Now, the interesting claim then that JP2 is going to say is in this response to God, in this blessedness, this beatifying, the virginal state of the body will manifest itself as the eschatological fulfillment of the spousal meaning of the body and sign of personal subjectivity. So the spousal meaning of the body has its definitive eschatological meaning in this virginal state of the body. If we recall, we have uh, this statement of Jesus saying that man, or that in the afterlife they'll take neither husband or wife. This is in reference to Mark 12. Well, if they take neither husband or wife in the afterlife, that means marriage and the conjugal union is something of this world. And so there's something more to our bodies, more to our masculinity and femininity. And it's going to be found in this response to God. Are you still there, Guillermo?
Yep,
Okay. Did you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I don't.
Okay. I'll just speak up. Would you like to read this quote?
Yep. Quote, in this way, then, the eschatological situation in which they will take neither wife nor husband has its solid foundation in the future state of the personal subject when, as a consequence of the vision of God face to face, a love of such depth and power of concentration on God himself will be born in the person that it completely absorbs the person's whole psychosomatic subjectivity. End quote. And that's from the third paragraph of Audience 68.
Thank you, Guillermo.
Yep.
So, what is kind of peculiar about this quote is the fact that JP2 says that in this response of gift of in this response when we give ourselves as a gift to God in the beatific vision face to face, we are completely absorbed. And then we just say a couple slides ago that no, you don't lose your subjectivity, you're not completely absorbed. And did we not say in the previous audience, no, you do not, you don't lose your subjectivity, it's not completely absorbed. And so the question is JP2 contradicting himself? And we're going to answer, of course, no. So first, we just need to keep in mind what is not intended here is a meaning of absorb, like how the Buddhists or some of these Eastern religions conceive the afterlife, where once you die and you're enjoying being united with the divine being in these other religions, you lose your subjectivity, you lose your personhood, you become one with God. It's kind of like how if your personhood's a cup of water and it gets poured into the ocean, well, that cup of water is now it's no longer distinct. It's part of the amorphous blob of ocean water. You are nothing in comparison. You're just gone. You're just part of the oneness. And that's precisely a misunderstanding of what JP2 is getting at here. I think an analogy to understand what JP2 is after, we can use the marriage, the relationship to a husband and wife who so love each other that this community of persons, in a sense, absorbs them. It absorbs them in a way that there's no room in their subjectivity for them to let another person into their lives in this as a communion of persons at this conjugal level. There's only room for one other person. That's it. Because this love so absorbs them for that person. There's only the husband for the wife and the wife for the husband. And so a second communion between, say, the wife and another man, or between a man and another wife, is impossible. You cannot give a full gift of self to a third party. It's only between you and the other, the man and the wife, or the wife and the man. I think it's something analogous in this respect that when you give your gift of self to God face to face in heaven, there is no room for you to give a full gift of self in that manner to any other being other than God. And in this respect, that you're so absorbed in this love and this full giving gift of yourself. So your personhood is intact, it is operative, it is being fulfilled and perfected, but it's done in a way where we can say, we think just your loving attention is so focused on this one thing, this God, seeing God face to face. So we don't want to equivocate between two different meanings of the word absorb. Guillermo, do you have any further reflections on this?
I don't.
Okay. So the Beatific Vision, this Trinitarian communion of persons, is a full participation in God's inner life. And this full participation can be described as a concentration of knowledge. Man discovers in God the whole world of relation that is constitutive for the ordering of the cosmos. And we can also bring back in this other idea of knowledge as the knowledge of a man, similar to man knowing a woman, woman knowing a man within a community of persons, except this is at a more intimate, deeper level because it's a man knowing God and God knowing man, because you are seeing God face to face. That is the most intimate portrayal you can have of someone, is seeing them face to face in that intimacy. And so in this intimacy, we we humans, we rediscover ourselves, this the fullness of depth of our personhood and intersubjectivity that is proper to the union of persons, that is proper to the communion of persons. And just to recall this term intersubjectivity, it's referring to the interactions between persons. Inter, and then subjectivity, personhood. It's this interacting, this relating to between two people through this gift of self in our particular context. And so man becomes a sharer in the other world only through the realization of this reciprocal communion of persons that is commensurate with our status as created beings, as created persons. And so the other world, that is to say, heaven, is a rediscovery of our subjectivity and this intersubjectivity. And in this rediscovery, we find the definitive fulfillment of our personhood and the spousal meaning of the body. Now, this definitive fulfillment, it let's see. So in the beatific vision, man will concentrate fully on God, and in this concentration, it does not take away from our definitive fulfillment as persons, but it introduces us into our fulfillment, and it consolidates us into it through through the beatific vision, through our concentrating on God. We get to know God, we get to respond to God with our gift of self, and through this dynamism, we discover our fulfillment. Do you have any reflections for us, Guillermo?
Yes, because I think as human beings, as just the fallen beings that we are, it's hard to consider, that we would be just eternally contemplating God in the beatific vision when we're so dependent on, just for lack of other words, uh images, or we're so dependent on our imagination that whatever we don't already know, or um whatever we don't already know, we're not attracted to it. But nonetheless, we are attracted to what is good. And that's just on the not superficial level, but in the temporal level. Of course, we seek what is good, whether it's for our nourishment, whether it's for our uh for our well-being in some way, shape, or form. And then at the deeper level, we just know that the meaning of life has to do with goodness, or goodness itself has something to do with the meaning of life. And just one thing that really helps me to think about what heaven is going to be like is just knowing that we will be beholding God, whose identity is good. We hear God is good, but that's just who God is, in such a way that he infinitely and eternally overcomes any other goodness that we could possibly experience in this life, and could probably even conceive of, or we could conceive, well, that we could temporarily conceive of. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah, thank you for that, Guillermo.
Yeah,
This is really a hard topic for us to wrap our minds around
of
because,
course.
as we read in the Bible, eyes have not seen what's prepared. Right? We don't know what heaven is going to be like, other than these kind of small windows into what it's like. I think for me, just thinking about this idea of contemplating God forever, some people think contemplation as, oh, the scholar up in the ivory tower type. And I don't think it's that going to be that kind of concentration, that kind of contemplating. Rather, when a man loves a woman, a woman loves a man, sometimes all you want to do is just stare into their eyes and just look at them and contemplate them. I think that experience is more akin to what life with the Trinity will be like. Let's see here. Do you have anything else you'd like to add on?
That's a good analogy. And just if I may briefly, what I mentioned previously about our dependence on our imagination, I really got from this author. His name's Frank Sheed. In his book, Theology and Sanity, he just really breaks down our ability to know. It has my highest recommendations, that book. It's a very long book, but it's a must read, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you for the book recommendation, Guillermo.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's see. Concluding remarks. So, just some concluding statements about Christ's words here that JP2 makes. So, the words of Christ complete the revelation of the body. This revelation penetrates the heart of reality, experience in the body in particular. This revelation also, it will pass beyond reality in two directions. We have Christ directing us to the beginning, Genesis 1 through 3, and you have Christ directing us to the other world, to heaven. And these two directions are extensions of our experience of the body. The experience of historical man is not entirely cut off from either of these directions. It is, in fact, the experience of historical man that will be the basis for us to reconstruct a theological anthropology of man. It is on the basis of the experiences of historical man that we are able to go in the direction of the beginning or the other world to develop our theology of the body. And what this also means then is that this content, the theology of the body, is something that all men are able to come to know and understand. These are truths accessible to everyone because everyone has a body and experiences of it. And so this revelation of the body is available to all of us. Do you have any concluding statements, Guillermo?
I do not.
Okay. Just something to look forward to in the upcoming audiences is that JP2 is going to continue this analysis of the two directions when we talk about the next audience, and with audience 70 looking at the work of St. Paul on this topic. So you'll see this um, this discussion of two directions continue. And with that, thank you for watching our video. If you have been enjoying our content, please like, subscribe, share, and comment our material. We need your help spreading the word, and in our case with this, it is the message of the theology of the body. Every little bit you do helps us, and we thank you for that. If you like to, well, if you like us enough to consider supporting us financially, you can do so through Patreon or PayPal. You can also directly tip us cryptocurrency through the Brave web browser. You can do that directly on our or not Facebook page, but our YouTube page and our website. And all of your financial contributions will go towards the maintenance of our website and our ability to purchase materials so that we can continue providing you with great resources such as our Theology of the Body video series and our many articles on our website. At our website, nouvelesprit.com, we have many free articles for you to read on theology, philosophy, culture. All the content on the website is free and available for you. We also have on our website a podcast, which Guillermo, can you give us some more information about?
Yes, in our other podcast series, we talk about a variety of topics, such as trends in culture and politics, and we address them from a Catholic personalist perspective. You can listen to our podcast episodes on the La Nouvel Esprit website in the podcast page under media. You can also use that page to, excuse me, you could also use that page to locate us on Buzzsprout and listen to us there, or use Buzzsprout to locate us in other popular podcasting platforms, such as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.
If you're wondering just where do I find all this social media, you can simply go to lenouvelesprit.com/subscribe. There you can find our mailing list, our Facebook, YouTube, PayPal, Patreon, all the various places to find our podcast. We throw it all on one page, easy for you to find. That is again at lenouvelesprit.com/subscribe. Guillermo, do you have anything else for our listeners?
Yes, I would just like to ask our listeners to keep us and our mission in your prayers.
Yep, please continue praying for us. We are in gratitude for those. And with that, we will see you in the next video.
Bye, everyone. God bless.